This is episode 9 of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. In this episode, JK and I banter a little bit about how he's back in Australia and the differences in weather between Australia and Europe before we get into mental fitness and really what it means to be mentally fit and mentally tough and some of our own personal experiences with it. We recorded this episode right before JK got on with Andrew Hiller in the CrossFit space to discuss CrossFit versus High Rocks. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, I highly recommend you go do that right after this. Let's make hybrid fitness work for you. How's it going, JK? Welcome back. We are on episode 9 now, I believe. How you been?
Good, thanks, Anthony. It's good. It feels like forever since we've sat down for a podcast, mate. Actually, It has been. It's been 2 or 3 weeks, hasn't it?
It has. In that time, you traveled from Europe over to Australia. How was that flight, and how's it adjusting?
Oh man, the flight. Like, I don't know about you, but I hate a 1 hour flight, let alone it was 22 hours in the air from London. So 22 hours in the air. It was like a 27-hour door to door. Oh, it's a long way. It's a long way, but we got there, mate, and adjusting well. I feel like the only thing you can do is land and go for a run. That's the first thing that I do all the time, and it kind of gets me back into the groove, moving straight away after like a long flight. So that's what I did, and back to the grind now, mate.
Yeah, and I saw Georgie's story the other day that the winter in Australia is nicer than the summer in Europe.
Absolutely, mate. It's like winter now, and it's in Celsius. It's about 25 degrees Celsius, like average, and that's
25
our
Celsius?
winter. Yeah, and that's
like-
our winter.
What is that? That's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit on average in
So
the winter.
it's crazy, mate. Yeah, we're very lucky, and like the sun's up at 6 a.m. Doesn't go down till 6 p.m. So we have like a 12-hour window as well. So no, it's really nice. There's pros and cons of everything though, and everywhere though, right? But yeah, no, it's really nice to be home for a while and bunker down and go again, mate.
How hot does it get there in the summer?
Gets like 35 to 40 degrees Celsius is like a normal day. So what's
40,
that in?
40 degrees Celsius would be 107 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
So that's pretty warm.
Yeah. Where you live, Salt Lake City, does it ever get to that temperature?
Right now my computer says it's 93 degrees outside, Fahrenheit.
Okay. Fahrenheit.
Which I don't know the exact conversion for you, but that's probably 30-ish degrees Celsius.
That's pretty hot.
Yesterday it was 100 degrees. It broke 100 here, so it was probably 37 Celsius, 38 Celsius.
Yeah.
But we used to live in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas would get really freaking hot, 113, 115, 120 degrees. And so that for you would be, what is that, about 45 degrees Celsius?
Yeah.
But we also,
that is hot.
yeah, Salt Lake also is at elevation right now. So it's at elevation unless something drastic happens to the earth. But it's about, it's about 4,500 feet, 4,500 to 5,000 feet above sea level. Which, what's that, 1,200 meters? Something like that. No, more than that. 1,500 meters. It's about 1,500 meters. And our winters, we get kind of cold. So we probably average about 30 degrees in the January, February months, which for you is 0 Celsius.
Yeah, yeah,
That
which
that'd be
is
the
cold.
that'd be the average temperature. So our winters are a lot more brutal than yours. Uh,
Yeah. I've seen your basement set up, or your garage set up where yourself and Lauren do most of your training. Does that get really hot? And then also, does that get really cold?
yes. So it gets really hot. I actually did my threshold runs yesterday in it, and I was just like, after the warm up, I was drenched the way I usually am after
Yeah.
the threshold. So I was just like soaked, and I ended up cutting a few sets off of my thresholds because I was like, I ain't gonna make this. So I was doing 3 minute thresholds yesterday,
Yep.
and
Yep.
ended up still doing my cool down. Cut my cool down a little short just because I was dying. It's hard to go out in the sun and do the long runs when it's that hot. But and it's hard this time of year to wait until it cools off because sun doesn't go down until 10 p.m. So it's pretty light out, especially right now. In the winter, it does get very cold. Lauren does not like the cold at all. So we
Right.
have we have heaters. We have little space heaters, and we'll put them like multiple space heaters around the garage for her to work out in the center of. In the summer, we have a fan we got from Costco, like a blowing fan that does really
A
well.
big, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not that big. It's just like a little like snail type thing that
Ah,
to look at, and it
mm,
blows. It blows pretty hard, so you just point it wherever you want it to go. Um, I'd say it's probably in the summer, you're probably working out in 85 to 90 degrees in the garage, and in the winter it's uh 30 degrees in the garage, 32 degrees, 35 degrees. Unless you put that space heater in, then it's maybe like 40, which Celsius would be like 0 to 5 degrees for you. Um,
wow. Yeah.
but we, the only thing that's actually a little difficult is I don't know if you know the Concept 2 machines, if they're cold, the chain will skip. So one of the things we
I've
do
heard
is
that. Yeah.
if we have we know it's going to be cold, we'll go out there with the heaters beforehand and point them right next to the machine so it heats up and point them on the chain, and then we'll do our workouts in the
Wow.
garage.
Wow, wow, wow. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before, but I don't think I've ever, unless in Scotland, I didn't realize when it was cold, but I've never been on a machine and noticed difference. But I've heard that before. But if Lauren loves the heat, not heat training, but just let's just say normal temperature, you guys got to come to Australia to train, mate.
I think it would be a
It's
lot of fun.
golden.
She
Yeah,
doesn't she
one
she
day.
she doesn't like overly hot. She likes that middle zone, like everybody's
That
comfortable in,
middle
you know?
zone. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Uh yeah, she actually has something called Raynaud's, so like poor circulation to things that comes off on an event. So it's painful when it's cold, so we don't really go into the
Yeah,
cold.
okay. Right. I've heard that before as well. Yeah. I think this is a topic we could probably cover at some point, mate. Like temperature and different temperatures like whilst training and stuff and how that can affect performance, right? But today's topic we decided to go with mental fitness. And I want to say mental fitness, not mental toughness, because one to me, it's such a difference. And the way I want to start it off, Anthony, is by actually leading from what you just said before about your intervals, right? So I'm assuming you may have had 10 by 3 or 12 by 3 minute intervals yesterday. And you decided due to the um, uncontrollable factors such as weather, you decided to call it short or to just not finish what was programmed. Um, for some, that's really, really hard to do because, like, for me, mate, I'll be honest with you, mentally, whatever you program for me, like, I need to get done. And this kind of leads me into like mentally, um, your mental fitness is something that, when we talk about hybrid sports and high rocks or deca or anything, it's very important. But also, there's a difference between being mentally strong and mentally fit versus being mentally not smart. And yesterday, with your thresholds, you were just mentally smart. Is that correct? If that's the
Yes,
right terminology?
ish. It was first I didn't have anything. I don't program for myself. Most of the time I'll just follow our own track, one of the tracks that we have.
Yep.
I actually went on and I was like, well, I warmed up. My sister was here, Lily and Lauren, we were all working out in the garage and just kind of got FOMO, wanted to hang out with them. And I was
Yeah.
in, it was hot, so I
Okay.
had that excuse too. And uh, I did 6 intervals when they were all in there. And then they all left the garage and I was just by myself um, doing
Okay.
my last 2 intervals. And so I ended up
Yeah.
doing 1 and 2 more. And I just kind of told myself, I was like, well, I hadn't planned on doing this anyway. Like I just kind of threw it together because
Yeah.
it wasn't in my plan to do it. I was just going to go outside and run, but it was way too hot. So instead I went in the garage and it still ended up being hot, but I just wanted to work out while everybody was in there. And when they left, I was
Yeah.
just like, okay, well, I'm good here.
You're done.
I
You're
got
good.
enough minutes. This was the minimum I could do. So I ended up doing
Right, right,
eight.
right.
I ended up doing 8 intervals and then the cool down, I did half of what I had told myself I was going to do at the beginning. So I did my
Okay.
cool down, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna go inside. I'd already squatted, I'd already like done some other stuff, so I was okay with myself pulling the plug. And the reason I was okay with it is because I don't have an event on the horizon that I'm like, I'm gonna train for this, I don't have a goal that I'm reaching for. Usually, if I can put something there, I'm going to go for it. Otherwise, like
Mm.
otherwise I'm gonna be just do what I feel like doing. Uh,
Yeah.
for my goal right now is to just get generally fit, stay where you're at until I can figure out what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, sorry, like to kind of go back to it then, mental fitness to me, right? I'd
Hmm.
like to hear your kind of opinion on this. Mental fitness to me is simply being okay with um, the the stimulus at hand, and that's pretty much it. Full stop. Period. Right? Being okay with it and allowing yourself to mentally be dialed into, let's just say, the pain cave or whatever the stimulus is at that chosen point in training or in a race, and actually being okay at suffering in that. That's to me like as the simple terminology of mental fitness. Like, what's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's times and places to be mentally fit. Like, um, you need to be able to push through a workout sometimes. And always, I think always it should be smart, right? Like, is it pain or is it injury? Like, as an athlete or somebody working out, you need to know the difference too, and you should know the difference the higher level you get. So push through pain, don't push through an injury. Um, but additionally,
Yes.
mentally fit, like, yes, there are times when you need to stick in there and grind, especially if you're going to be trying to achieve something like a world championship, or you're going to be competing in a high level race, like, because it's probably going to suck. It's probably going to reach that. It's
Mm.
going to test you. You're going to have to experience that at some point, especially during that race, especially if there's somebody that's on the same level as you or equal to you that you are going to have to like push past, you got to be mentally fit there. But
Yeah.
at the same time, not every race is like that. Sometimes you end up in no man's land and you have to be in yourself mentally and push yourself somehow. So there's a different type of mental fitness to competing against somebody to pushing yourself. Um, so
Yeah.
you have that. One thing is that, like, I don't know if you've experienced it. I don't program workouts that are just this is just a mental workout. I don't do that because
No.
uh, you shouldn't experience that in your training. You should experience that externally, um, and in different types of environments. Now, as far as like how your mental training goes, maybe it's, you're hanging from a bar to work on your grip and you last 1 or 2 seconds longer than you did the time before. Okay. I pushed myself mentally. It's not that you couldn't do that last time. It's just you let go a little earlier. Um, so
Yeah. Yeah. I think like I agree with you when it comes to programming and obviously both being coaches here. Like there's no such thing to me and in my opinion as just like a mental workout because at the end of the day our bodies are is what is required to actually do the work of a workout or a race, right? But I know for a fact, Anthony, that I think mental fitness is just it's just something that you learn and understand through going through things, rather than like it being kind of put on you, if that makes sense. Like
mhm,
you've got to endure things over time, and over time I mean years and years. Um, I know for a fact, and I don't think I've actually explained this to you um, a lot, or like I don't think I've explained this to you about my Kilimanjaro experience, my Mount Kilimanjaro experience. And like I know for a fact we both have done Mount Kilimanjaro. But Anthony, I hands down the most the toughest thing I've done mentally is I peaked, and I'm not trying to, toot my own horn here, but I climbed Kilimanjaro twice in one go, right? So long story short, but my father he owns a company that takes trips um to to India and Africa, and they're kind of like expedition trips for the youth of Australia. So these 16, 17-year olds are going on these trips to kind of finish off their schooling here in Australia, and they go to a third world country and they do like a trip, or sorry, a trek. We used to help the poor over there, etc. I This was back 6, 7 years ago. I was working for Dad, and I was one of the leaders of the trip. And long story short, I ended up having to take a group up Mount Kilimanjaro, summited at Uhuru, which is the summit. I then had to come all the way back down to halfway. And then due to the fact that my father he was sick, he couldn't take his group up. I had to again go back up with the group. I chose to. I didn't have to, but I chose to. So in the space of 3 nights, I summited twice, if that makes sense. And to you, that you can kind of comprehend that because you've done it before. But I still remember, mate, that is the most mentally tough thing that I've ever done. Not necessarily physical, but um, and I can put down, like I know for a fact when the going gets tough in training sometimes, like I actually think about that sometimes. It's like, oh no, I've climbed Kilimanjaro twice in 3 nights. Um, but yeah, there's things that are mentally tough, there's things that are physically tough, there's things that are both. But I know that that experience for me has just allowed me to be confident with what I'm doing as well when it comes to my fitness right now, because
Yeah.
I've been there, done that with men, my mental fitness, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, so for anybody that's not watching this with the video, you can watch video, I think, on Spotify or YouTube. I just turned my camera. This is my mom,
Mm,
me, and my dad all at Uhuru Peak in Kilimanjaro. So it's the picture that sits behind me up here. And this is me and Lauren in West Virginia, but this is Uhuru Peak. So that's the top of Kilimanjaro. We went there in 2013. Um, so anyway, the thing I was going to say about that is to expand on what you were saying is when you started that journey, when you were going to go climb Kilimanjaro, you didn't know it was going to be a mentally tough or character
no,
building adventure when you went on it. That's one of the reasons, like, I don't program and say this is going to be a mentally tough workout because you actually don't know when those are going to come up. You don't know when it's going to get hard for you, when you're going to have to experience that push through. And I can't tell you in your programming this Thursday, it's a mentally tough workout because
yeah,
but like what happens when we get to Thursday and you're just like you're you're like just suppressed because of the load of the week already and you can't put the effort into it that it would require to actually get to that mental state, right? So
yeah,
when you do that, you don't know when it's going to be a mentally tough workout. Sure, there are some that I'm like, this is probably going to be pretty tough, but it's not that mentally something you're going to remember character building thing. Um, it's not that like I can't program that for you. Uh,
no,
and so when I think back about when are the mentally tough aspects that I've experienced, right? This climbing Kilimanjaro was very mentally tough for me because I got altitude sickness at base camp.
yeah,
When we
wow,
did, I don't like, I can still think about when I try to remember climbing from, because you do a midnight summit there.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
When I try to remember it, uh I get like flashes of like an image of looking only down at this little teeny rock trail and it just like they come up to me. That's all I remember is like I was
yeah,
blacking out on the way up there. But not
yeah,
falling over, so I got to keep going. I don't remember getting there. Like I remember taking this picture because I like forced myself to open my eyes and they're holding me up basically. Um
wow,
coming
yeah, yeah,
coming coming down the mountain later that day, we got down to base camp and my mom like half carried me down to the I assume where the halfway point you were talking about is that exit camp. I don't
yeah.
remember what the name of it was before you leave the next day.
I can't, no, yeah,
So she like I was slumped over her. But the thing with altitude sickness, every step you take down, you start to feel better.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
there are other things like when we started talking about this that just popped in my head about when did I get mentally stronger? One of those things
mm,
was we were just doing a sauna workout with in college. We had a sauna in our locker room at of the wrestling team, and we'd go in there. The whole team got into this. So you're talking like 40 guys, 30 guys inside of a sauna with the coaches and it was like benched up, right? But I was one of the first people in, and I like in order to get everybody in, you have to go sit. Well, I got the upper level right next to the heater, and I remember like dying in that thing. We were only in there for like maybe 20 minutes. But we were doing like contrasting, so like the whole team would go
oh my
in,
God, yeah,
the whole team would come
yeah,
out, take a cold shower, go back in, cold shower, back in, right? So and we did that like 3 times with like 15 to 20 minutes inside the sauna each time. Um, but I remember, I think it was the second or third time we got into the sauna and I was up in that corner. I started freaking out, and I'm like claustrophobic too. So with all these people, I'm the furthest away from the door. I started freaking out, and I left the sauna. Or no, I don't think I did. I think one of the coaches but they locked us in, right? So it was just that panic, but that mentally built me. I remember it mentally
Yep.
being something really tough. And there's workouts you can remember, workouts like that you don't expect.
Mm.
And it can be a workout that you absolutely dominate too. It can be an event you dominate
Yeah.
because when I was again, I was in a wrestling match and it was just going to be a standard like dual meet match. And I went out and I tech fall a guy, but it was the hardest I'd ever worked. And I remember just like coming off the mat and I went against the wall. Like you walk out of the venue. I won. I won by I'd scored so many points that they stopped the match early. It's a tech fall, right? So
Mm.
um I walk out and I slumped down against the wall and I just started like crying because of how like hard I worked and like it was just like overwhelming the amount of like work you put into that one match. And it can be any way like that. There was nothing significant
Yeah.
about the opponent or the match itself. It was just there are going to be times you don't know when they're coming that you might run into a mentally difficult workout. And it's, can you push
Yep.
through or are you going to break there? And that's kind of like
Yep.
maybe where the mindset of a champion comes in. Like, are you going to be the one to experience it, or are you going to be the one to back off because it hurts too bad?
Yeah. Yeah. The I remember hearing Matt like a conversation that Matt Fraser um I it may have been in his documentary. Matt Fraser, obviously 5 times fittest man alive, 2016 through to 2020, I think. Um, he pretty much he pretty much communicated that he used to tell himself how bad workouts should feel before the workouts start, because mentally then that you'll, like, for him, I remember he's pretty much saying there's not going to be any surprises then.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying that, and it's not it's not something that I do every single workout that I know it's going to be tough, but I know when there's a couple of workouts that you've planned me, Anthony, that I know for a fact that are going to be tough. Like, I've told myself, all right, I'm before starting, I'm like, no, James, I talk to myself, this is meant to feel like this. This is meant to feel tough. You're going to be okay. Let's go. Like, and it's just a little cue for me that I've done in the past to allow myself to, I guess, to be dialed into the stimulus, to be dialed into, or sorry, not to be dialed in. I'll use to be okay with suffering, to be okay mentally suffering. It's concept of like the sled push in a high rocks race as well. Like, everyone endures that in a different way, but also in a very similar way. Like, whoever you are, whether you're a open high rocks athlete or a pro high rocks athlete, those sleds are terrible. It's a matter of fact. It's a matter to me. Sorry, it's to me, the ability to just get on that sled, to continue to get on it as quickly as possible, is the most important thing. And that comes with your confidence of your fitness to be able to get back onto that sled if you do break, but also to understand that it's okay if you start feeling lactic acid. Like, it's actually okay if you start feeling that lactate buildup. You're not gonna, like, nothing drastic is going to happen. You know where I'm coming from here?
Yeah, I mean, so on that, this is a good full circle from an earlier episode we did about uh, our coaching style as well. Is that like you you need a coach who has felt that before. That's why it's like good to have that
Yeah.
experience. So there's because if I've never felt that, like what it's like to start running after going all out on an assault bike or pushing a sled, how am I going to program you a workout that like can mimic that or that can like help you get better in that aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, you can do theories and like science about it, but if you don't feel it, if you don't know, then you don't know.
Yeah,
And it's like
exactly.
that, you don't know what you don't know. But there's that that experience factor too. The reason we do a lot of workouts is to put you in different compromised states so that when your body does experience that, it's familiar. Oh, we've been here before. We know how to do this. You've felt it
Yeah.
before. The more you can feel, the more you can experience before it comes up in a race, the better you're going to perform,
Yeah.
right? So,
100%. Yeah.
and um, so like it's good for you when I program for you, it's good for you that I know what that most of those workouts are going to feel like. I know what they're going to feel like because I've either
Mm.
done that workout or I've done those combination of movements or like, and there are certain combos that I really like, and I want you to feel them all the time because they're similar to things you'll experience, right? And so it's getting familiarity with that. uh, so in terms of like building up the mental fitness of that, um, we're kind of just building up your ability to process that. Now,
Yeah.
if I give you something that's really hard and you've never experienced it before, you've never had the combination of those movements, you've never like maybe I give you a really hard, difficult level of something that I know you can push to. There's also something to be said for you don't know what it's going to feel like. So you don't know how it's going to be. So it can either go really, really well and hurt way worse than you're like, holy crap,
Mm.
or it can go very poorly because you don't know that
It,
how it's supposed to feel like and you think you've overworked too early. So it can go one
yeah.
or the way or the other. Now that's how you get people that are young. Usually it's young people that they go out and they do a race, or say they do a high rocks or a decafit, or they do some sort of long running race or something. And the first one they do is the best one they've done, and it's they do like three or four more and they can't quite reach what they did in the first one. Well, the reason behind that usually is because they didn't know, like you didn't have the experience, you didn't know how bad it was going to hurt, and your body's kind of
Yeah.
holding you back the rest of the time, so you have to get the movements that can build you back into that space to beat that first one you did.
Yeah.
uh,
Absolutely.
and I'm
Absolutely.
sure you have athletes. I know I have athletes like this that they do that first one and it's like their PR and they're like, oh, great, I'm going to go beat my PR. And the next one they do is like
Mm.
2 or 3 minutes slower. And they're like, what
Yeah.
happened? And it could be a course type thing in high rocks, but it also could just be you didn't build that first one. Like you hadn't experienced it. You didn't know what it was going to feel like. Now you do.
Yeah.
Now you think
Yeah.
you're controlling it and you're actually putting a governor on yourself that's too high. And we need to
Yes.
remove that.
Yeah. Yeah. And quite simply, it all comes down to experience, right? It all comes down to your history of um, stimulus, let's just call it, or lack of. And that's why I like just quickly going into it, like that's why like becoming a Hyrox world champion, you know, Lauren, your lovely wife, mate, like that that didn't come from the 6 months leading into the world champs. It came from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of experience of understanding her body, I'm assuming, and um, mentally, you know, mentally enduring, situations that she could probably do in her sleep now, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, uh, we had a big background, right? But Lauren goes into her first race and she took second to the High Rocks World Champion. And I actually talked about this in the last episode that I did solo. I talked about the races at first, where like she didn't know what to experience. She was in third most of that race, got to the wall balls, and we just assumed everybody knew how to do wall balls. We didn't realize there was a big discrepancy. She made up one place and took second. When oh, maybe if we had pushed a little earlier, could have got first, right? And it's that like experience, like, oh, now I know where to push. Now I know. And it was lucky for us, we got into the sport really early. So she's had not only the 9, 10 years of experience before High Rocks, but the 5 years now that we've been in High Rocks, and other hybrid fitness as well, because we did other sports like she did TMX and she's done DecaFits and um, all these other hybrid fitness events. The the experience from that she's built through that, like she's built so much experience. She knows what a race is going to feel like now. And that's really important. She knows what, not just like any race, she knows what a high level race should feel like,
High
can feel
level, yeah,
like.
yeah,
And what like going into every single race, what the worst case scenario for the runs should feel like, where like if you have to weave between people on a standard course, what the worst case scenario of the sleds is supposed to feel like. Uh or
yeah, exactly.
what the what the wall balls are
Yeah,
gonna feel like, what the lunges, what all these things are going to feel like.
yeah,
So there's that like that experience plays a super big role
massive,
uh
yeah,
in understanding not just the High Rocks race, but any event you're going to go do. Um,
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, look, we could talk about mental fitness or mental toughness or well, sorry, I potentially could for days, mate. But we might wrap it up there, Anthony. And once again, like for the listeners and the viewers, if you ever have any questions or any queries behind, you know, coaching and programming and training for your hybrid races coming up, please reach out to myself, jk.hybridcoaching on Instagram. And Anthony, where can they find you?
yeah. So if anybody wants to drop a review, subscribe, you can ask us questions on YouTube or Spotify. You can send us queries. You can message us on Instagram. We don't, like I said before, we don't have an Instagram for this exact podcast, but we'll get into that social
Not yet.
media space with this, and we will pick it up. You can find me at a wild Parasini on Instagram or the Hybrid Engine on Instagram. You could also uh, find us on YouTube at the Hybrid Engine. We have our website, the Hybrid Engine. You can also find JK uh, on Instagram and Fitter as well. So either of those you can go on to. I'd highly recommend you take a look at them. I know that uh, for the Hybrid Engine, we have a couple run programs if you like fixed length programs, and we have a couple daily tracks that you can follow. I can't recommend them enough. The daily tracks, to follow a daily track with a coach behind it that can help you and answer your questions, as well as a community. So definitely dive
Right.
into those if you get a chance. Either one, I'd look forward to it, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you soon, guys. Thank you.